The sun went dark just minutes ago. Everyone watched as it happened. In the darkness that followed, some people cheered while others cried, but most just stood in silence, watching. 20 years ago, a scientist predicted this disaster. No one believed him at first, but more and more evidence proved he was right. The sun would die in 20 years. When this news spread, the whole world fell into a deep depression. Strange, extreme ideas began spreading, making everyone anxious. Some people went crazy, some wanted to die, and others turned violent. Soon after, scientists created sleeping pods. They had a bold idea. Humans could sleep through this dark time until the sun came back to life. These pods became everyone's last hope. A month before the sun died, they finished building the last sleep center. Sleep centers were built all over the world, with enough pods for everyone on Earth. When the moment finally came, you stood in the crowd, looking up at the sky. The sun moved overhead as usual, then suddenly went dark without warning. The world fell into darkness, and city lights turned on, making it feel like an early night, just without the moon. Then the radio announcement began. Please go to your nearest sleep center, following the same steps as in our practice drills. The crowd started moving in one direction. As you walked with them, you saw fallen buildings and messy streets, thinking how people had already destroyed so much before the real disaster even began. Someone grabbed your arm. It was your friend. They asked if you would reconsider going into hibernation. You chose not to hibernate, watching as crowds moved away from you. You didn't know if this choice was right or wrong. After the sun died, it seemed like an endless night began. Most people had entered hibernation, and the world's original order ceased to exist. Your daily routine became searching for food and adapting to a world without light. People had depleted most food reserves before entering hibernation. You could only occasionally find leftover food in warehouses. This wasn't the life you wanted. After naturally becoming partners with your friend, you moved to a suburban house to begin a self-sufficient life. You prepared plant growth lamps to replace sunlight, using a small hydroelectric generator to power the house. You planted your first vegetables, which sprouted and grew successfully. Everything seemed to be improving. Until the 10th month after the sun died, Earth hadn't frozen as imagined. Temperatures remained normal. This should have been good news, but plants had been withering over these months. Animals that ate these dead plants couldn't survive. Your vegetables all died, and nothing would sprout no matter how you tried. You and all who refused hibernation faced your first crisis. Famine. Self-sufficiency became impossible. You survived 3 more months on your last food supplies. All nearby plants and animals had died, and you believed the rest of the world faced the same situation. During your final attempt at farming, you discovered hairless rats living beneath the soil. You didn't know if these rats existed before or what they ate, but after the sun died, they became very common. Regardless, you had to thank these rats. They were now the only food source, and easily caught. You often kept several caged on your table. After solving the food problem, you wondered how to pass the time. Reading became the best choice. At your partner's suggestion, you began collecting books. Initially, you gathered normal books, but later, to read in darkness, you started collecting Braille books. Decades passed this way. Your Braille collection grew, covering various subjects: language, literature, society, even children's primers. When you finally died of old age, books filled an entire room. At that time, a hairless rat you hadn't managed to kill escaped.